Hello everyone, welcome back to the series of database internals. In today's video, we will learn about consistency. Before that, we already have talked about atomicity, what is transaction, and basics about properties of transactions. And we have talked about in depth about atomicity already. Now, in this video, we will talk about consistency. So let's start with consistency. What exactly is consistency? I'm going to talk in three key points which we will be focusing on to define consistency. So this video will not be going to very longer video. What I am going to do is I'll keep it short and try to convince, I have made some diagrams and tried my best to represent it well enough so that you can get it very easily. So let's get started. The very first point, consistency is nothing but bringing database from one valid state to another. When I say this, let's understand through same example, like transferring $100 from account 1 to account 2. Let's assume we have this simple account table where we have ID column, amount column, and name column. Now going ahead, we have two entry over here, account ID 1 and account ID 2. Now we already have seen this query before. So what we will do is we will basically try to understand what exactly we mean by one valid state to other valid state. So when we are transferring $100 after the transaction, the database should be in consistent state, right? How do we ensure this? If you see the total amount, if we collectively sum these two rows, like Alice wants to send $100 to Bob, right? Before that, the total was nothing but 700, right? 200 plus 500, $700. Now, even after the transaction, it should be 700, right? And to understand this, you can see before the transaction, we are transferring $100. So here it becomes $100 because we are deducting $100 from Alice's accounts, and then we are transferring that $100 to Bob's account, and Bob is receiving that $100. That's why it became from 500 to 600, and we have deducted $100 from account 1. This is from one valid state to another valid state. If we look closely, we are checking first. If you see this line over here, we are checking first that the balance of account 1 should be greater than $100, right? Should be greater than or equal to $100. Then only we are able to transfer that amount. When this condition applies, then only we are deducting the money and then crediting that money to Bob's account, and then we are committing the transaction. So going from one valid state to another valid state is the very first property I can say of consistency. This is like very simple way to make you understand what exactly is consistency. So over and all, you can say this bringing from one valid state. So if you can say something might have gone wrong, like Alice still have $200. Now the total sum after the transaction is 800. What it should have been was 700, right? So this is from valid state to an invalid state. So consistency guarantees nothing this short of things happen. It maintains this integrity, the data consistency, and ensure that database comes from one valid state to another. Now let's come to the second point. Second point, it guarantees that it should follow all the defined rule, constraints, and then integrity principle. I'll come to each of these one by one. Let's take first example. The very first example is nothing but, let's say this is a customer table and it looks like this. So basically there is a customer ID, customer name, and balance of the customer. Then we also have order table, and in this order table we have order ID, customer ID as a foreign key, and the amount of the order, right? To understand this, what exactly here? So basically if you see, we have a primary key customer ID and primary key of order ID, right? Database makes sure that whatever entry we are making, we have a unique ID assigned to that row, and that ID should be unique and not null, right? So it's database responsibility. Even if you try to insert a duplicate row, it will throw error, right? Or if you try to insert duplicate row over here in order table, it will throw an error, and it will not also allow null value. Only unique values are allowed, right? So this is first thing. Then we can see there is foreign key reference from customer table. So one customer can have many orders, right? That's why we have a customer ID column. So now I would say that if foreign key is wrong, so let's say this is 111, there is no such ID 10111 in customer table, right? So it will throw error. It will say that this foreign key does not exist in customer table, right? So if that foreign key does not exist in customer table, then in that case it will throw error. We also have talked about defined rules. So if you see, we have defined the rule like balance cannot go negative. So we have put data validation constraint over here. So this balance, this column cannot be negative, right? Or this amount we can say cannot be negative. You cannot place an order with negative amount, right? That is not possible. So this is nothing but defined rules, constraints, and integrity principle. Now going ahead, let's take an example of valid transaction. Let's say we are trying to insert a customer and then customer's order, and then trying to update the balance of the same order, right? To understand this, let's go even further. We have a customer, same customer table, an order table. What we are doing is we are inserting, and this is, if you look closely, this is a transactional statement. For now, we kept it as transactional statement. So if anything goes wrong, so let's say we have entry in customer table, but something went wrong while inserting second query in order table, it will roll back the first query also. Going ahead, if all these three queries are successful, it is a valid transaction. It is bringing database from one valid state to another valid state. Now I'll go ahead and show you an invalid transaction. Let's say we are trying to insert an order with wrong customer ID. If you see, there is no customer ID with 2, but we are trying to insert in order table, right? In order table, we are trying to insert 102 and then trying to insert a customer ID 2 and value 200. But what is the problem? The problem here is this customer ID, which is referencing as a foreign key from customer table. So basically in customer table, it's a primary key. This should present, like there is no key over here, which says that column do not have any primary key as or customer ID as value 2, right? So this is invalid. So what it will do is it's an invalid transaction. It will roll back. So basically it will delete this entry, right? This is what referential integrity is. Basically, it will not allow a foreign key which does not exist as a primary key in some other table, right? I've just given you this example. Now going ahead, the third thing, it should roll back invalid transaction to maintain consistency. Rollback we have seen multiple times in previous two videos. I'll quickly talk about it. So basically we are trying to insert two values. In first value is nothing but I'm trying to insert 1. The value will be 1. Then it says Alice, right? And 500 rupees, right? And then order ID 101. Then it says that customer ID 333 and 150. Amount is 150, right? If you see this right here is a invalid statement, invalid reference to customer table, right? So it will delete this value over here, right? It will delete this row and this row, and it will terminate the query because this is an invalid query. According to the database, it will not be able to bring from one valid state to another because the reference here 333 is not valid. This is it. Now let's look at how do we maintain consistency. Basically, there are 3 points: constants, triggers, and transaction management. In constant, we have already seen like there can be many. These are just few examples. Like we can put some check constant, foreign keys, primary key, unique keys. All these constants does nothing but make your data consistent. And whenever a transaction happens, it brings the data from one valid state to another valid. So it skips the data from being corrupted, or you can say it do not allow the data from being corrupted. Also, there are triggers which enforces rules to initiate actions when data changes, right? So if a data changes, you might to validate few things, right? And there is transaction management. We already have talked about what is transaction, commit, rollback, all these keywords in detail in transaction video. So this is it for like how consistency is maintained. So these are the key points, like how database maintains consistency. In terms of distributed consistency, we will talk that in separate video. For now, we are talking about consistency in terms of acid property. So let's quickly revise what we have seen in consistency video. This basically bringing database from one consistent state, one valid state to another. So let's summarize what we have seen so far. Bringing database from one valid state to another is the very first point that we have learned. Second point is it should follow all the defined rule, constraints, integrity principles, like balance should be greater than 0. We can say age, a person age should be greater than 0, right? We can put some validation. And then there are some foreign key, primary key, all these integrity principles, referential integrity. We have also seen like what is referential integrity. And then the third point, it should roll back an invalid transaction to maintain consistency, that we already have seen, right? This is it for the consistency. And we are going to learn isolation in next video. Isolation will be a bit longer topic and it is really important. So stay tuned for that. Thanks.